Break with Karen. I'm so glad you could join us today, and I'm really glad to have our guest, Tyson Vogeler, with me today. You're going to learn a lot about him, and I don't think I will have to ask too many questions. You will fill the air just fine. It is a joy to be here. It is a joy to come into your home and be with you and spend time with you. So the reason that it's named Take a Break is to literally say grab a cup of coffee and sit down with us, and maybe you'll make a friend or meet a new neighbor. So welcome, Tyson.
Thank you, Karen.
It's very nice to have you
again.
Yes, always nice to see you. And now that I know you're a neighbor that lives right across the valley from me, but I do want to see the geese.
Yes, you need to come over and see them.
And their goose house. That's the cutest thing I ever saw. So let me ask you, first of all, how did you come to know Grays River, and where did you grow up? In reverse order, if you like.
Well, I grew up in Vancouver, and so Southwest Washington's been my home. And I think when I was young, my family, we had a travel trailer, and of course we traveled all around Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and so I had been out to Southwest Washington through the years. Spent time at Ilwaco, of course, in Long Beach, camping, and I knew Grays River from a variety of different ways. I think, first of all, by camping and doing things out here, but my first job out of college was as a fish checker in Ilwaco.
Oh.
So I was down in the docks checking salmon and fish coming in, and I did that. That was the summer of 1987.
87.
So that summer I was traveling back and forth to see mom and dad in Vancouver frequently, and so back and forth through Grays River all the time, but I kind of knew it before then. So then fast forward many years, and my first career was as a fish biologist, Washington and Alaska. But then when I was in Alaska, I decided I was going to leave the university there where I was working, and I wanted to pursue a teaching career. So I came back to Vancouver to do my graduate work in Portland. One of my trips, my job while I was there in Portland, I was working as an EMT for Karen American Ambulance. And funny story, I brought a patient back from the Veterans Hospital back to Grays River in the spring of '96, and delivered him home in a wheelchair car, and drove through floodwaters because it was the spring of '96, and now I live right across the valley from him. So, but what brought me here finally was after having finished my graduate work at the University of Portland. I met then Superintendent Robbie Johnson.
Oh, yes.
Who was the superintendent of the Naso Grays River Valley School District. And he invited me to come out and see the youth camp because they had an opening for a science teacher at the youth camp.
Oh.
And so that's what brought me here. The district hired me, and I worked 8 years at the youth camp as a teacher.
I did not know that. I mean, I knew you'd worked out there, but... Now, we had Alan Bennett here this morning first, and he had worked at the youth camp too.
Yeah, and it was after I was there, yeah.
I figured, yeah. So, when did you come back here?
I moved here in August of '97.
97, okay. And are you glad you did?
Absolutely. Didn't take long to, as always, when I started looking for work and as a teacher and a place to live, I had two choices in mind in the state. It was either kind of deep southwest Washington or far northeast Washington. Those were the two corners. I wasn't interested in Vancouver or Seattle or any other places. And so, first of all, I got one of my two choices, my priority places to live. But it didn't take long to be in Grays River to just where it just felt home. It just felt like home.
I know the feeling.
Yeah. It was very fast.
Yeah, it calls us here. So we three of us, because Carol Larson is our audience for today, we three all live in Grays River.
Huh?
Good place. So the floods don't bother you?
The floods don't bother me now.
No.
I admit the first time I had to drive through them, I was kind of taken aback, but now you just deal with it, and floodwaters are often just a chance to stay home and
Read books.
chill out. Yeah, read a book.
Or visit your neighbor if he's in town. So, since you've come back this time, you serve on the school board.
I am on the school
The
board
Nace
now.
River School Board. And you also were recently accepted at being on the Noxious Weed Board.
Yes.
Yeah, so any other boards you serve on?
Not right now. No, in the course of my career, so I taught for 8 years here in Nacelle, and then I started a career as a school administrator. So I worked a couple of years in Elma as an assistant principal. Then I moved to the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction in Olympia, and I was there 3 years. And then I was in Castle Rock for a while, and then I finished my career at the Green Mountain School District as superintendent and principal. And in those roles, you serve on many boards, commissions, and task forces. So, but right now, no, just the Noxious Weed Board and the Nacelle Grays River Valley School District.
Yeah, well, having attended many so far
Yeah.
important meetings, you do a great job.
Thanks.
You're vocal, you're decisive, you're confident, and that really benefits the whole board.
Well, I think when I talked to the board about it was an appointment. It was a vacancy that had been open for several months.
Right, long time.
Yeah, long time. And nobody had come forward. I thought it was an opportunity to take all my experience and expertise in education and help the district through some challenging times with COVID.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
And they do, I think they do have an openness to all of your suggestions
Yes.
and speaking from experience. So it's nice to have you on that board.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, so where all have you lived?
Let's see, I went to school in Bellingham, graduated from Western Washington U, and then I moved to Ilwaco for about 5 months, my first job. Then I lived outside of Olympia for a short time, and I think what was interesting, at the beginning of my career, working as a contract biologist, you hop from job to job. So 4 or 5, maybe 6 months at a gig, and then you're looking for your next job. But then I had the opportunity. I was always interested in working in Alaska, and so in January of '88, I took my first trip as a foreign fisheries observer to the Bering Sea.
Oh, that's a good break-in.
Yeah, good break-in in January of in
Were you
the
on
winter.
ships very often?
Yeah, well, that one I was out for almost 4 months on my first trip.
Oh,
Yeah,
boy. You didn't get sick.
I don't get seasick, and so
Yes.
I'm fortunate at that. But I was on a Korean fishing vessel.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in the Bering Sea then. Let's see, I went from there. I went then to a Korean vessel off the coast of Washington for a couple of months, and then I bounced back and forth between Seattle and the Bering Sea for the most part, sometimes Kodiak, as a fisheries observer. And eventually there was a point there where I took a job with the University of Alaska managing a sampling program in Kodiak, and so I was there for a while. That kind of set the track, I guess, in a way of my career. The university, after I had worked for them for a few months, offered me a job teaching in Anchorage.
Oh.
Teaching short courses. And it's interesting, I never wanted to be a teacher. I never intended to be a teacher. People encouraged me to teach when I was graduating high school, and I wasn't interested. But university asked me to teach, and after some arm twisting, I said yes. And so I was teaching courses for biologists, to train biologists to go work at sea. And at the same time, I was working for a consulting company in Anchorage, so I was kind of double dipping there and had 2 jobs. I was very busy. And the university offered me an ongoing position. They just said, I said, "Oh, I've got a job." They said, "Well, we've got money to pay you. So, if you want to do curriculum development for us, we'll give you an office. You can do the work." And
Wow.
I started doing these short courses for them, periodically every 2 to 3 months, and that worked into a full-time position as an instructor.
Of course.
Yes, and so that kind of, I learned to love teaching. I didn't want to be a teacher at first, but I really learned to love teaching. But I didn't like university politics, and that caused me to leave.
Again, connected.
Again, yeah.
It's connected to the state.
Yeah, and after some soul searching, that's how I came to be a teacher. I decided I missed the teaching, I missed the classroom. I didn't like the university politics, so I decided I would teach public school.
Good.
And so, back to answer your question, where have I lived? So
Wow.
I spent about 7 years in Alaska, mostly in Kodiak, but bouncing around a bit.
Kodiak's quite something. Yeah. Well, you've been everywhere.
I have.
That's good. So you know this area well as a professional science person. I mean, you recognize what you're in.
I do.
And
yeah.
the flooding.
Yeah. Most of my work as a biologist here in this state as a technician was in the Chehalis Basin,
Okay.
out of Montesano. But yeah, I know the area.
That's very, very nice area. Yeah, I love Montesano. If I had to live in a little town, it won't be little forever though. It's going to be
It's growing.
it's going to be a suburb
It is.
of Olympia. So when you started developing your land into a what type of farm? A gentleman farmer or a
I just call it's just my homestead. So
your
yeah.
homestead? Okay.
Well, and so so after being here a couple years, so I moved here to teach in '97, and after a couple years, I decided I wanted to stay. It was just it felt at home. I felt at home enough that I decided I wanted to stay. So I started searching for property, and I found a piece of property on Covered Bridge Road. So I'm right across the valley from you.
Yep.
Which a lot of people, old timers, know as Badger Beach.
Yes.
Right,
And-
so it's kind of washed away now. There, you can't get down there very easily. But the gravel bar was Badger Beach, where everybody swam.
Went.
Yeah, and so I bought. It's about 12 acres. And when I bought it, Kenny Workla and his crew had logged it off a few years back, and so it was clear cut and replanted. And I just started from scratch. There was nothing there but a road in.
Oh, you built your house.
I built the house, yeah. So I know my father thought I was crazy, but I told him I was going to buy this property and I was going to build my own house.
Good thinking.
Yes. And so
So I bet it's worth a whole lot more than it was when you bought it.
everything's worth more, yeah. But
Everything's worth more.
there's an awful lot of sweat equity in my place.
Yeah.
So what I did is I bought a plan for a horse barn online. And I modified it and working with Chuck Beyer at the planning office in Cathlamet, and he was very accommodating. Drew an upstairs loft, and so it's about 1,100 square feet upstairs, and the downstairs is all shop.
Oh, of course. Of course it is. What was I thinking?
And I never intended it to be my house. It was always going to be a temporary, and then I was going to build a house, but then life happens, and
There's no horses, so you might as well.
Yeah, it just ended up being my house.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So it sounds like you want to stay.
I will be here the rest of my life. I'm convinced of that. People asked, when I moved to start my administrative career, I bounced around, and so I ended up always having 2 or 3 houses. But Grays River was always home. So when I moved to Elma, I was there, I had that house for about 5 years and lived there for about 5 years. But I would be home almost every weekend. And the same thing when I traveled then to Castle Rock. So my career was close enough that I could always get home to Grays River on vacations and most weekends.
You weren't that far away.
Not that far away.
Yeah, and that's quite, in some ways. I've been to Elma. But I love the trip when you go up 101 and then pop over to Montesano,
Yes.
and then you go on over, and you can just drive and drive and drive through rural country, and Highway 6 as your way home. Then you've seen a lot.
Highway 6 is one of my favorites.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, it reminds me very much of Montana. The high valley with, you still got big hills, but the valley itself is high.
Yeah.
And that's what puts me into Montana. And there's some nice homes, Menlo and through
Yeah.
there. Yeah. You're a good addition to our community here.
Thank you.
You're very friendly and smart, and you know what you're doing. And you're very easy to listen to when you bring up new ideas, such as
you.
for the school board. And I often come across people with your kind of gifts who are way ahead of you, way ahead of everybody. And I don't often come across people who will pull very slowly at that rope. You know, it's bring them along, but as you always say, something like baby steps or something, because it works with you.
Well,
Yeah.
I think,
I think you're going to be a really, and as I've said before, I think Amy Chadwick is going to be the same kind of person for the board. So that's new experiences for them with board members. I think the board members have historically been local people who haven't come from someplace else, because you know they were born here.
well, and I think a lot of school administrators, you see a few that will go on school boards after they retire. But I think an awful lot, and even teachers, once they're done, and they want to be out of it.
Yeah, well,
So
I can see with the wages, teachers don't make a whole lot. Who was here first today, did I say? Who was here first? My memory's gone again. Anyway,
Alan
Alan
here?
Bennett
Alan
and
was,
his
yes.
wife both works as teachers.
Yes.
Plus they have the farm from her family, the Simicas.
She was sorry.
Yeah. So the farm, I guess, belonged to the Simicas. And anyway, they're on the family farm. They're having a 100-year reunion, a birthday party for the property this Sunday, because a lot of folks have come clear from Finland for his big party. So I don't know that many of us who have 100-year-old houses, but there's quite a few around here, I'm sure.
there are quite a few.
There are
houses,
quite a
yeah.
few, and thanks to the timber that they used in the old growth, you know, and the cedar. Oh my goodness, the cedar. Some of those houses aren't even rotten yet. But I say yet because I just experienced this much water and humidity and so forth. It's easy for things to get rotten. But that's my story, not yours. So do you have any vision for where you'd like the school board to be in a few years? Or the school, rather.
You know, well, first of all, I think that needs to come a lot from the community. So certainly each of the school board members brings in some vision of their own, but the vision of the school long term shouldn't be that of just the school board members. It should be of the community. I think, you know, looking at education, I think education is at a bit of a turning point. And I think COVID has opened our eyes to some of the other possibilities, you know, with the distance learning and whatnot. And as much as people didn't like the distance learning, it's an option that allows kids to experience teachers from other places even, or for homeschoolers to tap in sometimes to what's going on at the school without having to travel to the school.
Right.
So I know that our model of education that we all know, you know, with our traditional kindergarten through 12th grade and our high school, it served us for over 100 years now, and without a lot of changes. And I think probably in the next 10 to 20 years, we're looking at changes statewide and nationwide, not just in our community. I think that's something that the school board is going to have to look at, because, you know, we have to try and foresee what education is going to look like 20 years down the road, because there's that question. You see some communities, even in Washington, are, because of reductions in enrollment, They're talking about having to close school buildings. So I think we have to be wise in planning for the future. First, to talk to our community and see what they desire, but also to have some foresight to say, well, what's our population going to be? What are our needs going to be 10, 15, 20 years down the road? And not build something for today's model that won't serve us 2 decades from now.
Well, I did notice in the presentation at the meeting last Tuesday, I guess it was, no, the Tuesday before, the 19th, there was the figure of, in the census, there were only 34, 35 more people than there were at the census before that. However, as far as the school's concerned, as usual, we've had several of them on homeschooling. And then we've had new people move in, probably like Amy Chadwick, and brought their kids in because of the reputation of the school. So, and I'm glad she's willing to serve on the board too. Yeah, she's a really good addition like you are. I think the idea of what you have brought forth quite a bit about strategic planning is going to make a big difference to the community, because what not only is education transitioning, but our Finnish heritage is dying off. And whereas 50 years ago, everybody had, somebody in the area who had the same last name, and you could go from house to house and so forth. And everybody wanted to go from house to house because they really loved the social life. But now we've turned into, again, electronics, and people can be schooled at home. And perhaps going to church once a week is about all they have for social interaction. So I think this area is going to be transitioning into more of a mixed bag, more of the soup.
I agree. I think our economic base
Yes.
is changing. You think back to how the community's changed when the Weyerhaeuser mill closed.
Pulled out.
And, and as timber harvesting methods have changed, it's changed the needs for workers. And so there's fewer jobs here. But one of the changes that I see, we're certainly seeing more retirees moving to our community.
Gosh, yeah.
I think because of cost of living and just the rural lifestyle that we all love. But I think we're also seeing people that are able to work remotely.
Yes.
That are moving
Yes.
here. We've got fantastic internet. And why wouldn't you want to be able to live in Grays River and, look out your window at our beautiful landscape?
And if it floods, just keep on working.
Yeah, and just work from home. So I think all that changes, but of course, like you say, it changes the population too. So it changes the mix. And as people come in from, this goes back to your question about school board, as people come in from outside, having experienced other things in other places, they come in with a different set of expectations.
And a different, I think it widens up their creativity.
It does, yeah, and new sets of ideas that to bring and to offer to us. I know, I had my first career, and then when I moved here, there were a couple times when I was teaching here that I recall asking, why do we do this? It'd be some district process, and the answer seemed to always be the same. Well, we've always done it this way.
Yes.
And this isn't a criticism of this, because I found that in most rural smaller districts. But you would say, well, but other bigger districts, they don't do anything even close to this. So I think one of the things for our school board that in our district, we need to be open to ideas. So you need to harvest the ideas from bigger districts that work well for us. And if they don't, you don't have to, but at least be willing to talk about them and see if something would serve us better.
Well, along with that, one of the things I've experienced, because when I had my consulting business, it was always about raising money, grant writing, how to actually raise money, and how to ask people for a donation. And the response to that was such a brick wall. Oh my gosh. Well, we wouldn't ask our neighbors. We wouldn't want to embarrass them. We, and well, we do. We'll have a bake sale if we need some money, but that it goes back to this is the way we've always done it, and and especially on the peninsula when I would get classes out there, it would just crack me up because you'd see these super valuable homes, and yet the answer to me was always nobody here has money. And I'm thinking, do you not open your eyes? And that brick wall, again, repeated that. Well, this is how we've always done it. We have a bake sale. And the events that might raise a couple $100 while people put in numerous hours. And still, the FinFest does not charge you to enter. It's free.
Right.
And they've managed to do that for years and years and years. And that is a quality out of the Finns. That's very generous in their own way, but I will decide if I want to give or not. You don't ask me. They were fairly offended by that, so I wasn't the most popular person, but I could get them money, so that made me acceptable. I'll put it that way. But I appreciate what you're saying about the school board because I think that transition in education is going to have to include the boards and some of the things that they have to look at. One of the issues came up at the last board meeting was about credit cards or debit cards going out to certain people on the staff, et cetera. And you came in and you said, well, what would be the policy about this? Well, of course, there isn't one yet. But that needs to be discussed and it needs to be sort of played through and tried. And then you thought, oh, we can't just hand it to the coach with an unlimited amount when he travels. I think there's just a lot of transition going on. The people that are moving in are really loving the old houses, and they buy them for little and totally renovate them and make beautiful homes out of them, which raises the property value so that as older people end up having to pay more taxes. And that's always been an issue. And I really think that there's a time when Mark Lindquist, years ago, when I first came here, I was kind of under Mark's wing, and he would call me every morning, 7:15, when he had got his coffee, and he would call me Mole Valley because my yard was so full of molehills. And Bonnie Lindquist still calls me Mole Valley. Anyway, Mark would say, well, I've got some ideas, tell me what you think. And they would be so far out, so way out there. And he said, how can I get this back to where it's attractive to the local people, excuse me. And I would always say to him, baby steps, just...
You gotta take baby steps.
He wanted to jump in there and get all these things done. And it was a learning for both he and I, for me also, that, you sit down with say, you get Mark's dad, Jack Link, was sitting in the room, and then you get George Domit, and then some of the, George Hannigan, oh boy. And that generation, they would invite me to their coffee in the morning at the old coffee shop in Ruth Domit's place now. And I'd throw out an idea and they'd say, oh, honey, oh, honey, oh, honey. But they never tried to get me to bake them a cake or anything. They would listen to me and then they would set their limits with me, but they would, George would always be sitting and thinking. He would think about things. So as we look around and we see that transition in culture, I think that's going to be something we're all going to have to get used to. Like this last Sunday, I must have 400 cars go by my house to go to the covered bridge, and that means 800 trips because they go back. And the motorcycles have learned to slow down by my house because I stand in the middle of the road and go. And I tell them, slow down, slow down, you scare me. So there's change everywhere. But I think we're having the chance because we're rural and things move slow here anyway. So as maybe not huge ideas that we're going to require everybody to be drafted or whatever, silly thought, but as we all go the regular pace that the Finns are comfortable with, I think we'll have a more solid footing, is what I'm trying to get around to. We won't be as experimental as we could be, but we'll have people really thinking and coming in defensively with that attitude of, well, we tried that, it didn't work. I've heard that a million times. We've tried that, it didn't work. So if the rest of the board can, and I truly feel this way, if the rest of the board can be open to not only new ideas, but when parents come in and have, I won't say a complaint, but they have a question. How come you don't do this, or how come you don't do that? They're giving you a mirror back of the culture they're experiencing from you. So I think what we're going to see is eventually see there's more openness to hearing them and to responding with slow pace.
Well, and it's important to listen. And I think I said that at our last board meeting, which is why I advocated for some work sessions with some
Yes.
public listening time. Sometimes in the midst of a regular board meeting, when we've got agenda items we have to take action on, if we get comments at the last minute, about something we're going to take action on, it doesn't give us the time to really give them full consideration. Now, sometimes we can table an item, but sometimes because of timelines we can't.
And sometimes they don't like what they hear from you. So understanding and working through that with them rather than over them.
But being willing to listen and I think encouraging our parents, students, staff, and all of the community, if they have concerns or they have questions about what's happening with the district, to come and communicate to us in a calm, rational manner.
If possible.
If possible. Sometimes we get emotional because something is close to our hearts. That's, I think, usually what it is with parents is it's you're making decisions that affect their kids. So I understand the emotion, but if people will come and just openly talk to us, or if they'll email us and say, hey, I heard about this, here's my thoughts. And we can put that in our brain and mull it around and weigh all the different perspectives we get and weigh those early instead of in the last minute. It allows us to make decisions, I think, that best reflect what's good for the community. And usually found in the career in school administration, you're never going to make everybody happy.
Oh God.
You just you're going to have to make decisions as a school board member or as a school superintendent or as a principal. You're going to make decisions that not everybody is happy with. But if you have listened and tried to weigh all the different parts and make the best decision that's best for everybody, or is good for as many people as possible, I think that's all people can ask.
I long for the day when we can do a workshop on consensus, the difference between A and B. It's got to be this way or that way, but to see how do we make that decision as a group so it becomes a consensus decision, and we all, if needed, we all vote. But so it comes to consensus rather than one way or the other, because consensus is such a beautiful thing when it works.
It is, and I think that's a challenge for some people. I know in working as a school administrator, when you're in a team of administrators, we would often make committee decisions behind closed doors, right? Because it's not a public meeting. It's you're making some decision about how to proceed, and there was often disagreement in those meetings, but the agreement amongst us was always, no matter how you felt on that issue, when you left that room, everybody was on the same page. And so even if you disagreed with it was back to consensus. Even if you disagreed with the direction that the group decided to go, you supported it. And that's what school board members have to do. So that's always the agreement that,
that's our goal.
If I don't agree with a resolution that the board passes, I still sign my name because it passed.
Yeah, and it was more than you.
Yes.
The joy, I think, of watching, because I've seen a lot of progress. I've seen a lot of progress in this board. To me, it's a lot compared to what I'm used to. As I said, it was a hard beginning for me. I was an outsider who was trying to tell them how to raise money, and this is the way we've always done it. Where'd you come from? Where were you born? Are you a Finn? Are you Scandinavian? anyway, as I watch, and I learned to watch this process, believe it or not, when I worked for a program that was sponsored by the Catholic Church. And the priests would sit down in one room, and they may be the priests from a whole sector of Northeast Seattle or something like that, and they were assigned. You have to decide what to do about this new arising problem of drugs in your parish. And you'd start out with just blunt saying what they thought. And then you'd find the guy who said, it's not our fault, we're the church. Then you'll have the guy that says, don't you have dealers on the front porch of your church every once in a while on the weekend? Well, I've never seen them. That doesn't mean they're not there. Anyway, to watch them work their way through consensus and stop to pray, they would actually stop to pray and say, calm me down, help me to just breathe evenly and to bring my perspective in, but not to bring my ego in. And that became really fun to watch because it would work. A bunch of priests who, and they are pretty much naive about, it's crazy to say, a little bit naive about human behavior. A little bit. Their expectations were fairly simple, but.
Well, there's a few things that are black and white because it's legislation, it's the law.
Exactly.
And we've been through a couple of those in the school board already.
Senator Jeff Wilson, when I met with him here a few weeks ago, he made a comment to me. He said, the way the school boards are set up in Washington, they're the weakest. They're the weakest governing body in the state. They really don't have a whole lot of power. And I thought about that. I said, well, what can they do? And he would say, not very much.
Yeah, we make decisions within the constraints of the law, and I've, after many years, more than 20 years in school administration, I came to understand that Washington is, in my opinion, one of the most overregulated education systems in the country.
Well, now you worked for OSPI,
I did.
you? And did you get aware of it there?
I did, yeah. So I worked for 3 years in Olympia for OSPI, doing school safety and security.
Ah.
And so I went to OSPI right after the Virginia Tech shooting. And so there was money and there was new legislation directing comprehensive school safety plans and emergency drills. And so I did that work for 3 years. But yes, from working inside, I guess what I saw in Olympia, it was a little bit disillusioning. Because I worked to help try and move some legislation forward, and I just got a real eye-opening about how politics in Olympia work. And the reason I only stayed, I loved the work I did at OSPI. The reason I only stayed for 3 years was I realized I could have much more direct impact on the lives of kids.
Oh, sure.
By being back in a school building. Even though you impact the system when you work at OSPI, a lot of it is very far removed.
Is it like developing policies and
It's
procedures?
developing policies. I mean, you give guidance to districts. You can do some good stuff, but it's an awful lot. It's bureaucracy. You're pushing paper at a state level. And
just like with the youth camp.
Yeah, and not directly impacting kids, and I missed that part of the work.
Well, you're a born teacher.
Yeah.
You just didn't realize it. For a while.
Yeah, took a while.
Yeah. So if you decide that you want to volunteer with some youth, what would you like to do?
Oh, I don't know.
Something real basic. Or maybe not.
Yeah, one of the things I did before I started doing public school, teaching public school, is I worked with kids from the Anchorage School District that went to Seward for their outdoor education day. And so there I was a marine scientist, and the Anchorage School District sends kids out and they put them on boats in the bay.
Wonderful.
And so they pull plankton nets and they do all that kind of work. And that's one of the things that really convinced me I wanted to teach public school, because you watch the light come on for kids, and it's that experiential learning. So if I was going to volunteer at something and put my many years to work, it would be something like that. Something in outdoor ed, environmental ed.
You may become busy with her.
I seem to be pretty, but it'd be something where I could open the eyes of kids to the world, the natural world around them.
You know, something like Carol was mentioning that kids don't really today understand what logging was like. When I first came here, and one of my first grants that I got was U.S. Fish and Wildlife. No, it was state. And it was to, we did one where we built a fence to keep the cows out of a creek, out of Duck Creek. And another one was injecting this stuff into Japanese knotweed. But the very first year we did it, Jeff Rucklich, who teaches environmental science in Kathleen, he called Jerry DeBryan and said, can the kids come have a tour? And Jerry said, well, I'll get you somebody to give them a tour. So he paid for his safety officer, who was on contract, to give them a tour through here and here and here. And it broke my heart because you'd have kids that were in high school and they would say, is this what Dad has done all these years, all day long? This is what my dad does?
They didn't know.
He didn't know because he'd never had an opportunity to go up there. And now, of course, with the gates, and if you don't have the little sticker on your windshield, you're not going in. And God forbid that they give you a key because you lose it, it's $1,000 fine. So those kids went through, and they were actually working. We went up to the top, and they could see everything that was going on. And then the safety person took them through a great big culvert, and they walked through the culvert. And he just talked to them about, okay, now do you feel like we've gone lower and lower and lower? And if you're a stream and you're carrying fish, would that help the fish get out? That kind of stuff. Those kids ate that up like candy. And I always remembered the one that said, is this what my dad's been doing all this time? Because all she saw was Dad coming home all muddy and dirty and,
Didn't
but
know.
strong. But she could physically see how strong he was and experience it herself. So that always impressed her. And so this guy that did the tour, unfortunately, Jerry got mad at him, and so he was thrown out. But so to speak. But he was just great with the kids. I mean, I enjoyed the tour very much, and it always seems to me that for the benefit of the families, there ought to be some open timber party or something. It's a good, safe place for them to go to on a Sunday, and they can all come together. And what Jerry does is he gets very big, huge Christmas parties, but they're drinking, so it's not a family happy time. But that would be my hope for the outdoor ed. We'd be able to arrange for those kids to be able to get onto Long Island or learn to use a kayak or things like that. And otherwise, I've heard so many older women say, well, at least we won't have murderers in the town anymore. And I told you about that. And I think you said there were murderers.
Well, yeah, at least attempted murder or kids that did participated in drive-bys. One of the things I remember, when I was working at the youth camp, you'd go to a teachers' conference someplace, and the other teachers would say, "You work with those kind of kids?" And it's like, to me they were just kids. And I think that was true of everybody that worked at the camp. They were just kids to us. And so you're talking about kids not knowing what their dad did. Our kids that grow up here in Grays River and Nacelle, they're pretty closely tied to the land. Most of them, they're pretty aware. I think the outdoor school at the youth camp, if it comes to fruition, it has the possibility to open the eyes of kids that grew up in an urban environment.
Oh yeah.
Because that's most of the kids that we saw at the youth camp when I worked there were Seattle, Tacoma, Renton, some from Spokane, maybe Vancouver, but they came from urban areas by and large. And most of them hadn't ever experienced a rural area. And most of them had never done anything like work in the woods.
Oh, right.
Of course, so, I taught aquaculture. That was part of the reason I was hired by Robbie. And we ran the little fish hatchery there on campus. And so it was funny to see these, kind of tough street kids. And now you're telling them you want them to. We spawned fish when I was there, and
sure.
Now I want you to pick up this 5-pound rainbow trout, and we're gonna spawn this. And at first they're kind of, I don't want to touch that, right? And also just being able to teach kids how to work. So part of my approach was, so we did an awful lot of stuff manually that we could have done with equipment.
Oh, sure.
So because I think teaching work ethic and giving kids that ownership of the project is important. It's like, well, and so I remember we had a raceway to put in, a third raceway, and they asked if I was going to get the backhoe from the camp. I said, no, we're going to hand dig it. So I taught kids how to use a shovel and wheelbarrows, and they kind of griped about it. But I said, look, if you can use a shovel and wheelbarrow,
You can work.
you will always find work. If you can do manual labor, it may not be fun, but you will always find work.
Of course, as you know, you and I could talk for a long
Yes.
time, but I'm glad to get this on tape. I'm very glad to get this on tape, and it will be shown into the community quite a lot. You are a gift to us, Tyson. Always remember that.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that you were able to spend the last hour with us, and I appreciate your interest in all of these interesting people that I get to talk to. If you have anybody you'd like to have interviewed and put on a tape, especially any of the older folks, so that would be a wonderful thing for your family to have. Let me know if you have anybody in mind. I'm happy to respond. My name and phone number are in the Eagle at the top of the Downriver Dispatch. It took me a minute to remember. Okay, thank you. Have a great evening.